So picture this. You are staring at an open, totally empty suitcase on your bed.
Oh, I know this feeling well.
Right. You are just trying to pack for a super simple one-night trip. But the sheer weight of deciding like which shirts to bring feels like you're trying to solve some crazy multivariable calculus equation.
Yeah, it's completely paralyzing.
It really is. You're just completely drained before you've even put a single pair of socks in the bag.
Mm-hmm.
Or consider this other scenario.
Okay.
You feel this bizarre, almost physical sense of dread right before meeting an acquaintance for the second time.
The second time specifically, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, the first time was fine. You got through it. But this second meeting just has your stomach in knots, and you were desperately looking for any excuse to cancel.
Just frantically looking at your phone, hoping they cancel first.
Yes. So if you, our listener, have ever experienced those really specific, exhausting variations of anxiety, we are looking at a text today that is going to fundamentally change how you view your own brain.
It really is a massive paradigm shift.
It is. We have this profoundly insightful, intensely personal, written account from an author who has actually spent the last 9 years in a state of extreme social withdrawal.
Which, in Japan is often referred to as Hikikomori.
Right, Hikikomori. But I want to be clear about our mission for this deep dive. We aren't just looking at this to gawk at the extreme edges of social isolation.
No, not at all.
We are using this incredibly self-aware text as a magnifying glass. We want to decode the universal mechanics of anxiety, the actual biological reality of cognitive overload, and that painful sting we feel when we compare our lives to our friends.
Because there is so much universal truth in this highly specific experience.
There really is. Okay, let's unpack this. Because this author hasn't just written some sad diary of isolation. I mean, they basically authored a comprehensive manual on human psychology.
They absolutely have. And to really understand the gravity of what this author has accomplished, we first have to, strip away our societal instinct to pathologize everything.
Right, because we love to do that.
Yeah. Oh, we do. When you feel paralyzed by packing a bag or you dread seeing someone again, the default cultural narrative is just that you are malfunctioning.
Like you're broken somehow.
Exactly. We are heavily conditioned to assume that a well-adjusted person just glides through these mundane tasks without any friction. And if you can't, well, you just need to toughen up.
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Right. But this text completely flips that framework. With this almost surgical analytical precision, the author validates these feelings not as a defect, but as actual evidence of a hyper-attunement to the world.
Wow. So it's not a bug, it's a feature.
Sort of, yeah. You aren't failing at life. Your nervous system is simply processing a vastly larger amount of data than the average person.
But that makes so much sense.
You're basically an overly sensitive receiver picking up every single frequency, every microexpression, every potential variable in the room.
Just constantly scanning.
Yes. And what's fascinating here is that when you view anxiety as a data processing issue rather than some kind of moral failure, the entire paradigm shifts.
That shift is huge. It really is. And, to really grasp how this person ended up in a 9-year withdrawal, we have to start at the micro level.
We really do. Just a regular day.
Yeah, we have to look at what happens in the brain on a completely ordinary day when someone simply tries to walk out their front door.
Which sounds so simple to most people.
Right. But the author describes this phenomenon where, faced with seemingly simple tasks, their mind just completely goes blank.
Yeah, that total whiteout feeling.
Exactly. And staying true to that paradigm shift you mentioned, they refuse to frame this blankness as a weakness.
No, it's a mechanical failure, essentially.
Right. It is a symptom of total system overload.
Yeah.
And they introduce this brilliant analogy of a water cup to explain the mechanics of this daily paralysis.
The water cup analogy is just the foundation for everything we are going to discuss. Exactly. The individual drops are entirely harmless, but eventually that water level reaches the absolute brim.
Right up to the edge.
Right. The surface tension is holding it all together right at the precipice. And then one final, completely microscopic drop falls into the glass.
The famous final drop.
Yes. It is no larger, no heavier, and honestly no more significant than any of the hundreds of drops that preceded it. But that single drop breaches the surface tension.
And the whole thing spills over.
The entire cup overflows. The structural integrity of the container basically collapses.
Wow.
And the author uses this to explain the invisible mechanics of anxiety. Your working memory, your cognitive capacity is that cup.
Okay, I'm following.
And the drops of water are all the incoming stimuli and the unpredictable variables of the outside world.
The text actually gives concrete examples of what those drops look like in practice, and honestly, they're strikingly mundane.
They are. It's not about huge life events.
No, not at all. Like taking a train, for instance. The author says that might be perfectly fine. Getting on a direct train is just one draught. The cup can hold it,
It's a contained environment.
right. But if you add a bus transfer to that journey, just one single bus ride after the train, suddenly their legs freeze.
The variables just multiply.
Exactly. The mind goes blank, the cup overflows. Another example they give is taking a day trip.
Oh, this one was fascinating.
Yeah, leaving the house and coming back the same day is completely manageable. But the second you make it an overnight trip, it introduces this massive flood of new
A
drops.
whole new category of variables.
Right, the brain starts screaming, how many clothes do I bring? What if it rains and my shoes get wet?
What if I run out of clean shirts?
Yes. It's this cascading effect that just entirely paralyzes them.
We really need to look at the underlying neurological mechanism here, specifically through the lens of something called the predictive processing framework.
Okay, lay that on us.
Well, we tend to view taking a bus or packing a bag as simple, almost thoughtless actions. But your brain is essentially an advanced prediction machine.
It's always trying to guess what's next.
Exactly. Its primary job, from an evolutionary standpoint, is to minimize surprise. Because, surprise in our ancestral environment usually meant danger.
Right, a surprise meant you were about to be eaten.
Precisely. So every time you introduce a new variable into your day, your brain has to run these incredibly complex, probabilistic simulations of potential outcomes just to prepare you.
So when the author says they can handle the train but not the bus transfer, they are basically doing the subconscious math of predictability.
Exactly that. I mean, think about a train. It operates in a highly controlled environment.
Right, it runs on a fixed track.
It stops at designated platforms, and it usually adheres to a strict timetable. The entropy, or, the level of disorder and unpredictability is incredibly low.
So your brain doesn't have to work very hard.
Right. Your brain doesn't have to spend a lot of metabolic energy predicting what a train will do. But a bus, however, is a very high entropy environment.
Oh, totally. Traffic, weather, everything.
It is subject to traffic jams, detours, road construction, and just the subjective, unpredictable behavior of the driver and all the other motorists on the road.
So it's not just one extra vehicle.
No. By adding the bus, you aren't just adding one more step to the itinerary. You are exponentially multiplying the number of unpredictable variables your brain has to actively monitor and simulate.
So the cup overflows.
The author frames this brilliantly. They say the paralysis isn't a lack of courage. It is a strict mathematical capacity issue.
It sounds exactly like having too many tabs open on a web browser.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Like you have 40 tabs open, you're streaming high-definition video, you're downloading some massive system update in the background.
Well, and the fan is just screaming.
Yes. And then you try to open one tiny, simple text document, and suddenly the whole computer freezes.
It just locks up.
Right. The cursor turns into that little spinning beach ball, and the system is done. But the computer isn't broken. The hardware is fundamentally sound. The RAM is just completely maxed out.
The system is overwhelmed by the sheer volume of active background processes.
Exactly. And the author's basically saying, my psychological RAM gets maxed out much faster because my brain is running intense background diagnostics on every single tiny detail of my environment.
The human brain, particularly in someone who is hypervigilant, is constantly running those background diagnostics.
It's constantly burning battery.
It is endlessly scanning for threats and trying to secure certainty. When the text talks about the terror of unpredictable variables, like taking a spontaneous detour on a walk, it really highlights how the brain shifts into this hyper-aroused vigilance mode.
And what happens in that mode?
In this state, the brain basically demands absolute certainty to feel physically safe. When certainty is removed, when you don't know exactly what time the bus will arrive or if that detour will lead to a dead end, the brain allocates all of its available glucose and metabolic energy to trying to solve that unknown.
Wow, so it's a physical drain.
It drains the cognitive battery at an astonishing rate. What society dismissively calls a mental block or going blank is actually a highly sophisticated protective shutdown.
It's trying to save you.
Exactly. The brain is signaling, I have exceeded my data processing limits. I am halting all motor functions and operations to prevent a catastrophic system failure.
Well, wait, let me push back on this a little, just playing devil's advocate.
Well, sure.
If someone is just sitting on their bed, frozen with anxiety over packing enough shirts for an overnight stay, why can't they just, power through it?
The classic advice.
Right. We are constantly fed this narrative to just get over small hurdles. Society tells us just throw 3 shirts in a bag, zip it up, and walk out the door. It's not a big deal.
Just do it.
Yeah. If the problem is just that the working memory is full, why can't we force a hard reset and push past the anxiety through sheer willpower?
Well, because the autonomic nervous system does not negotiate with societal expectations.
Oh, I like how you phrased that.
When you try to force yourself through that kind of physiological panic, you are essentially ignoring a blaring fire alarm in your own house just because you're worried about being late for work.
That is a terrifying image.
Right. The brain's threat detection center, the amygdala, treats these small unknowns, the shirts, the bus schedule, the detour, not as minor inconveniences, but as a massive spike in environmental volatility.
Like a literal threat.
Yes, it represents a literal threat to your survival to the primal brain. Willpower relies on the prefrontal cortex, which is the logical planning part of your brain.
Okay.
But when the amygdala senses an overwhelming flood of unpredictable variables, it hijacks the system. It basically shuts down the prefrontal cortex.
So logic goes out the window.
Completely. When you try to use sheer willpower to overcome a biological capacity issue, you are only adding more stress to an already overloaded system.
You're opening another browser tab.
Yes. You are opening another browser tab titled Willpower while the computer is in the middle of crashing.
Oh, wow.
The author realized that forcing it doesn't just fail, it actively damages the hardware. The anxiety isn't a lack of discipline, it's a profound physiological response to information overload.
That completely changes how you view a panic attack.
Yeah.
Or even just that feeling of being frozen in indecision at the grocery store.
It's your brain trying to protect you.
It's your brain trying to protect you from an avalanche of variables. And this perfectly sets up the next major revelation in the text.
Yes, moving from the environment to people.
Exactly. Because if dealing with a bus schedule or an overnight bag can max out a person's cognitive RAM and make the cup overflow, imagine the catastrophic load on the system when you introduce the most unpredictable, volatile, and infinitely complex variable on the planet.
Other human beings.
Other human beings. The author dives into the mechanics of human interaction, and they make a point about socializing that feels completely counterintuitive. It almost feels backwards at first glance.
You're talking about the distinction they make between the first meeting and the second meeting.
Yes. The author claims that meeting someone for the very first time is actually manageable.
Which sounds crazy to socially anxious people at first.
Right, because first dates or job interviews are terrifying. But they say it might be slightly awkward, but it's essentially a blank slate.
There's no history.
Because it's a one-off performance, you can curate a persona, get through the coffee date, and survive it. But the real terror, the specific anxiety that makes your heart pound and triggers the urge to cancel, begins on the second meeting.
The dreaded second meeting.
And the reasoning is fascinating. On the second meeting, the other person now has a memory.
They have a baseline.
They have a permanent record of how you acted during that first encounter. So the anxiety doesn't stem from a fear of the person themselves.
Right.
It comes from the crushing, immense pressure to maintain consistency with the character you played during that first meeting.
It's exhausting.
The author compares it to performing an improvisational play, but without a script. And the deeper the relationship goes, the third, fourth, fifth meetings, the more exhausted the person becomes.
Because the lore is building.
Yes, because they are terrified of ever dropping the mask, breaking continuity, and showing their true, unscripted self.
This is a phenomenal observation, honestly. It ties directly into the sociological concept of impression management, which was famously developed by Irving Goffman.
Oh, what did he say about it?
Well, Goffman argued that all social interaction is essentially a theatrical performance. When you meet someone for the first time, you are on the front stage.
You're putting on a show.
Exactly. You curate a highly sanitized, optimized version of yourself. You present your most agreeable opinions, your most polite laugh, your most engaged eye contact.
We all do it.
We do. And as the author notes, in a blank slate scenario, you only have to sustain that high-energy illusion for a short, finite window of time.
An hour or two over coffee.
Right. There is no historical data, no precedent for the other person to compare you against. But the moment you agree to a second meeting, you have established a continuity trap.
A continuity trap. I love that term.
Now, your brain has to constantly reference the past. You have to remember exactly how energetic you were, which of their jokes you laughed at, what minor white lies you might have told just to seem relatable.
Did I say I liked hiking? Now I have to go hiking.
Exactly. You are no longer just having a conversation. You are managing a brand narrative in real time.
Wow.
The profound exhaustion the author describes has nothing to do with whether they actually like the other person. It's the sheer monumental metabolic energy expenditure of holding up a heavy, elaborate mask.
Oh, also watching them.
Yes, while simultaneously scanning the other person's face to ensure they are still buying the performance.
See, here's where it gets really interesting for me, because this flips the standard self-help narrative completely upside down.
It really does.
We are always taught that stranger danger or breaking the ice is the hardest part of socializing. Every corporate seminar is about how to make a great first impression.
How to work a room.
Right. But based on this text, I'd argue that the third, fourth, or fifth meetings are progressively harder and exponentially more draining.
The stakes just keep getting higher.
Because the lore of this fake character you've created just gets deeper and deeper. You've nodded along to opinions you don't really hold. You've exaggerated your hobbies to find common ground. And now you are trapped in your own sequel.
Yeah, it's like a TV show.
Yes. You have to keep the continuity going, like a showrunner desperately trying not to contradict a plot point from season 1.
Exactly. If you established yourself as the bubbly, energetic friend in episode 1, you are biologically locked into providing that energy in episode 4.
Even if you are deeply depressed that day.
Even then.
No wonder people feel absolutely wiped out after getting coffee with a casual acquaintance.
This distinction is so vital for understanding your own social fatigue. When you feel completely drained after a seemingly casual interaction, it is very easy to misattribute the cause of that exhaustion.
You blame yourself.
Right, you internalize it and think, oh, I must just be antisocial, or I'm broken because I can't handle a simple lunch. But the text separates these concepts beautifully.
How so?
There is the energy spent maintaining a character, and then there is the safety of being one's true self. The exhaustion is derived entirely from the former.
From the mask.
Yes. If you could sit with that same acquaintance and completely drop the mask, if you could stare blankly out the window when you feel tired, or bluntly disagree when you want to disagree, without fear of rupturing the social contract, the energy drain would drop to near zero.
Because you aren't performing.
Exactly. What drains the battery is the fear of breaking continuity. The fear that the other person will tilt their head and say, "You seem different today. Is something wrong?"
Oh, I hate that question.
We all do. Because that simple question implies that your mask has slipped. And for a hypervigilant brain, a slipping mask feels like an existential threat.
It's terrifying.
The author recognized that as relationships deepened, the demand for this unscripted improv increased, leading to a level of cognitive fatigue that eventually forced them into total withdrawal.
It's the terror of the mask slipping. Because ancient evolutionary biology tells us that if the tribe realizes you are faking it, you get exiled, and exile means death.
That primal fear is always there.
And if you've spent years isolated, your tolerance for wearing that heavy mask is incredibly low. The muscles required to hold it up have essentially atrophied.
They really have.
Well, this hyper-awareness of how we are perceived, this intense fear of judgment, it doesn't just stop with direct face-to-face interactions.
No, it extends much further.
The text reveals that this anxiety bleeds heavily into how we view others from afar. When you withdraw, you don't stop observing the world. You just watch it from a distance.
Usually through a screen nowadays.
Right, through social media. And as time passes, your life starts to violently diverge from the timeline of your peers. Which brings us to the author's deeply vulnerable, honestly almost uncomfortably honest confession about jealousy and stagnation.
This section of the text is perhaps the most difficult to confront, but also the most universally applicable.
It hits very close to home.
The author recounts the intense, deeply painful physical and emotional reactions they experience when hearing about their friends' major life milestones.
We're talking about the big, undeniable markers of societal progress. Friends moving overseas for exciting jobs, getting married, finding long-term partners, buying houses, having children.
All those traditional markers of success.
The author describes that upon simply hearing this news or seeing it on a screen, their heart becomes, the literal translation from the Japanese text, is something like turbulent or noisy.
A noisy heart. That's so poetic.
There is this immediate, visceral, physiological reaction to the news of someone else's happiness. And what makes this text a masterpiece is that the author refuses to hide behind a veil of socially acceptable false happiness.
They don't pretend.
They admit exactly how much it hurts. But they also realize something crucial. This painful reaction doesn't happen because they are a cold, bitter, or malicious person.
Right, it's not malice.
The friend's milestones act as a giant, unavoidable mirror. Hearing about a friend's wedding doesn't just mean a friend is getting married. It shines a harsh, blinding light on the author's own profound stagnation.
It reflects what they don't have.
It's the crushing, suffocating feeling of being left behind while the rest of the world is moving smoothly forward on this invisible conveyor belt of progress.
The way the author handles this is an absolute masterclass in emotional intelligence and what psychologists call affect labeling.
Tell me more about affect labeling.
Well, most people, when they feel a pang of jealousy regarding a friend's success, immediately suppress it. We are culturally conditioned to feel intense shame about envy.
We feel like monsters.
Exactly. We tell ourselves, I should be happy for them. I am a terrible, selfish friend for feeling this way. We try to push the feeling down into the basement of our subconscious and slap a plastic smile on our faces.
Double tap the post and comment congratulations.
Right. But the author refuses to simply label themselves as jealous and dismiss it. They take that ugly, culturally taboo feeling, place it under a microscope, and actually deconstruct jealousy into its root components.
They break it down.
They realize that this turbulent heart isn't a single emotion. It is a simultaneous cocktail of several different, deeply conflicting feelings occurring at the exact same millisecond.
The text breaks that cocktail down so beautifully. It says that this reaction is heavily made up of admiration. Just the pure thought of, I wish I could do that.
Right, genuine admiration.
It also contains genuine awe. The recognition of it's truly amazing that they have the energy, the capacity, and the social stamina to organize a wedding or move to a new country.
Awe that someone's water cup can hold that much.
Exactly. And woven through both that awe and admiration is the sharp, agonizing reminder of their own unfulfilled desires. It's this complex internal monologue.
How do they phrase it in their mind?
It's like, I am in awe of your ability to travel overseas. I admire your courage to build a life with someone, and I am in agonizing, blinding pain because I want those things desperately and feel biologically incapable of achieving them right now.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, by breaking the emotion down into these specific granular elements, the author prevents the jealousy from calcifying into toxic self-hatred.
Which is usually what happens.
Exactly. This is where affect labeling is so powerful. When you just say, I am a jealous, bitter person, you have defined your core character as flawed. You have launched an attack on your own identity.
You become the villain in your own story.
Right. But when you say, I am experiencing admiration for my friend, awe at their capability, and profound grief for my own unfulfilled desires, you have completely removed the moral judgment.
You're just observing it.
You are no longer a bad person. You are simply a conscious observer of a complex emotional reality. The pain of being left behind is still very much there, obviously, but the shame is removed.
And shame is the really heavy part.
Yes, and without the heavy burden of shame, the emotion can actually be metabolized and processed by the brain, rather than just buried where it will eventually fester into resentment.
So what does this mean for you, the listener, in your daily life? Let's say you are scrolling through social media on a Tuesday night, feeling a bit stuck in your career.
A very common scenario.
And you see a former classmate's elaborate wedding photos or their humble brag post about a massive promotion. You feel that immediate hot knot in your stomach.
That physical twist.
Right? Our instinct is to bury it, to quickly double tap the photo, type so happy for you with a bunch of emojis, and then feel incredibly guilty for the nausea in our stomach.
Yeah.
Is the author suggesting that we should actually lean into the jealousy?
It's a great question.
Like, should we just sit alone in our rooms and let the envy wash over us?
Yes, but with a highly specific clinical awareness.
Okay, clarify that.
The text suggests that denying these complex, contradictory feelings leaves them with nowhere to go. They literally get trapped in the nervous system. The psychological theory of cognitive dissonance explains the friction here perfectly.
How so?
When you try to force yourself to only feel joy for the other person while entirely ignoring the blaring alarm of your own pain, you create massive internal conflict.
Because you're lying to yourself.
Right.
Right.
The author's revelation is that multiple, seemingly contradictory feelings can and do exist in the exact same moment, and that is a normal function of the human brain.
So you can feel both.
Yes. You can feel genuine, authentic joy that your friend found love, and you can feel deep, agonizing sorrow for your own profound loneliness. One reality does not cancel out the other.
They just exist side by side.
Accepting that these dual realities exist simultaneously is the only way to neutralize the suffering. When you lean into the jealousy, you aren't wallowing in bitterness. You are simply allowing the grief of your own unfulfilled desires to finally have a voice.
They're listening to it.
You are looking at that knot in your stomach and saying, I see you, I hear that you are hurting, and it makes sense that you are hurting. Once that grieving part of you feels heard and validated, the turbulence in your heart actually begins to quiet down.
It gives you permission to be a messy, complex human being without assigning a moral failing to your pain.
Exactly.
But acknowledging this stagnation, really staring into that mirror of your peers moving forward, brings up a heavy, inescapable reality for the author.
It does. A very heavy reality.
Because it's one thing to feel a little behind in life. It's one thing to feel like you're in a rut for 6 months after a breakup or a job loss.
Which is hard enough.
Right. But it is an entirely different universe of pain to look back at the calendar and realize that almost a decade has passed. 9 years. The author confronts the staggering reality of being socially withdrawn for 9 years.
It is an immense amount of time. I mean, it is nearly a tenth of a human lifespan, spent largely inside a single room.
Just gone.
And the text does not shy away from the brutal gravity of that fact.
Not at all. The author describes these moments of raw, unfiltered, devastating grief. They write about crying so hard they literally cannot see.
Just absolute anguish.
They are mourning everything they missed while the world kept spinning. They are mourning the vibrant youth that slipped away behind closed doors, the messy dating experiences they never had, the overseas travel they never got to plan, the late-night dinners with friends that just never happened.
It's a profound, oceanic sense of loss.
But there is a fierce, unyielding insistence in the text. This grief must not be minimized.
They refuse to brush it off.
Exactly. The author states unequivocally that treating the lost time lightly, or trying to brush it off with a casual, "it wasn't that bad," is equivalent to treating one's own soul, one's own pain, lightly.
It's self-betrayal.
But simultaneously, they hold on to this powerful desire to believe that these 9 years were necessary. And they make it very clear that framing it as necessary is not some cheap, self-deluding escape.
It's not just positive spin.
It's not forced positivity. They want to believe it was necessary as proof that they faced their life and their unique biological limitations with absolute seriousness.
Because they did the work.
Right, because through the agonizing act of writing their feelings down on paper, day after day, the author realized that this intense, prolonged isolation allowed them to discover their highly specific, granular sensitivities.
This is a crucial pivot in the narrative, honestly, and it touches on a major debate in modern psychology regarding toxic positivity.
Oh, toxic positivity is everywhere right now.
Our culture is obsessed with the redemption arc. We love to mandate silver linings. We casually throw around phrases like, everything happens for a reason, or what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
I hate those phrases.
They are so dismissive. Clinically speaking, those cliches are often used as linguistic bandages. We use them to cover up a gaping, bloody wound so we don't have to look at the uncomfortable reality of senseless suffering.
We just want the person to stop being sad so we can feel comfortable.
Exactly. The author is doing the exact opposite here. They are not saying everything happens for a reason in a superficial way to make the pain disappear. They are practicing what psychologists call radical acceptance.
Radical acceptance.
They are demanding that the deep, agonizing grief of this lost decade be felt fully, down to the marrow of the bone before any forward movement is even attempted. The crying until they cannot see, that is not a breakdown.
It's not a failure.
No, that is the work. That is the necessary, grueling process of metabolizing immense loss.
But let me pose a challenging thought regarding that 9-year timeline.
Okay, let's hear.
9 years is a massive chunk of prime living years. The author claims that framing this as a necessary time isn't an escape, that it's proof they face their life seriously. But is there a danger here?
A danger of what?
Well, if you're looking at your own periods of deep depression, or the years you might have lost to a severe anxiety disorder, at what point does finding lessons in the dark times just become a psychological defense mechanism?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
At what point does it just become a way to romanticize our own trauma so we don't have to face the terrifying existential dread that we simply lost years of our lives to an illness and we are never getting them back.
That is the razor's edge that this entire text walks on. The line between romanticizing trauma and genuinely integrating it is incredibly thin.
It really is.
Romanticizing trauma usually involves creating a narrative that makes you a passive victim or a tragic, misunderstood hero without requiring you to actually change your behavior.
Like, my pain makes me a poet, so I don't have to leave my room.
Exactly. It's a way of saying, my suffering makes me special, which is a defense mechanism against the meaninglessness of the void.
Yeah.
But the author navigates this trap successfully, and they prove it's not romanticization through one specific, undeniable criterion. They did the grueling work of active, empirical observation. They didn't just sit in a room for 9 years, passively let the calendar pages turn, and then suddenly emerge claiming, well, it was a spiritual retreat, it was meant to be.
They were studying themselves.
They actively interrogated their own suffering, they mapped their own psychology, they figured out exactly what their nervous system was protecting them from.
The water cup.
Nah.
Variables.
Yes. When you extract actionable empirical data about your own biological functioning from a period of darkness, you aren't romanticizing the trauma, you are redeeming it. You are taking the raw, chaotic data of your suffering and turning it into a structured map for survival.
That's a beautiful way to put it. The isolation essentially became a sensory deprivation tank for the mind.
Precisely.
Without the constant deafening noise of the outside world, without the pressure of the second meeting, they could finally hear the baseline hum of their own operating system.
They found their baseline.
But having this deep, hard-won, granular psychological map is completely useless unless you actually take that map out of the laboratory and use it to navigate the real world.
Right. Theory versus practice.
You can understand exactly how your water cup works, but if you don't change how you pour the water, the knowledge doesn't help you survive. Which brings us to the final and perhaps most vital part of this text.
The actionable takeaways.
Yes, the author's deeply practical, actionable survival strategies for stepping back into a world that is inherently overwhelming.
This is the transition from internal theory to external practice. This is where the text moves from philosophy to actual environmental design.
The author shares very specific, almost militant ways to step forward, and the core philosophy of their strategy is to ruthlessly adjust the environment rather than relying on sheer willpower.
Throwing willpower out the window.
We talked earlier about the fallacy of just powering through, and here's what abandoning that fallacy looks like in practice. If they decide to go out, they deliberately choose
Keeping the entropy low.
If it's a direct train ride, great, they go. If it requires a bus and a subway transfer, they simply refuse to go.
They just say no.
If they have to take an overnight trip, they decide exactly what clothes to wear days in advance, packing the bag early to completely eliminate decision fatigue on the day of travel.
Brilliant.
They absolutely refuse to add spontaneous detours, focusing only on the main destination. The author makes an incredibly powerful statement here.
What's that?
They say reducing the number of daily plans, or saying no to a complex outing, isn't running away. It is a legitimate, proactive strategy brilliantly tailored to their own specific cognitive capacity.
This raises an important question about how society forces a one-size-fits-all metric of success. What they are doing here aligns perfectly with the concept of choice architecture, which was popularized by behavioral economists like Richard Thaler.
Choice architecture, how does that fit in?
Well, the prevailing societal wisdom is that a successful, productive day is a highly complex, busy day.
The hustle culture.
Right. The more you pack into your schedule, the errands, the spontaneous coffees, the extra stops on the way home, the more capable you supposedly are. The author is radically rejecting that metric.
Just throwing it out.
By artificially and ruthlessly limiting variables, by insisting on the direct route, by pre-planning the wardrobe, by banning detours, they are actively designing an environment that assumes a low cognitive capacity.
They're working with what they have.
They are hacking their own nervous system. Instead of constantly trying to increase the size of their water cup, which, as we discussed, is biologically impossible, they are meticulously controlling the drops of water so the cup never has a chance to overflow.
It's like architecting a building.
Yeah.
If you know the structural load-bearing capacity of a bridge is exactly 2 tons, you don't just keep driving 5-ton trucks over it while yelling at the steel beams to be stronger and stop romanticizing your weakness.
It would be insane.
That would be absurd. The bridge would collapse. Instead, you designed a system. You put up a toll booth. You weigh the trucks. You redirect the heavy traffic.
You manage the environment.
Right. You modify the environment to respect the structural reality of the bridge. Society constantly tells people with anxiety to just reinforce their steel beams, to get tougher, to drive the heavy trucks over the bridge anyway.
Just power through it.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
the author's saying, no, I know my exact load-bearing capacity now. I am putting up a toll booth. I am redirecting the traffic. And because of that, my bridge is going to stay intact.
That is exactly what they are doing, and applying this to your own life, whether you are dealing with clinical social anxiety, recovering from profound burnout, or just managing the baseline stress of modern life, requires a fundamental, terrifying shift in how you measure your own worth.
That's the hardest part, isn't it?
It really is. The author introduces what I think is the ultimate paradigm shift of the entire text. They state that you have to completely, permanently stop measuring your progress using the timeline of your peers.
Just cut the cord.
The marriages, the promotions, the overseas moves, those metrics are utterly irrelevant to your specific operating system. They are data points from a completely different species, essentially.
So what do you measure against?
The only valid mathematically sound comparison is comparing yourself to who you were 1 year ago.
A completely internal absolute timeline. Just you against you.
Precisely. And when you adopt that internal metric, the definition of a victory changes completely.
How so?
A small step like successfully completing a trip to the grocery store simply because you chose to ruthlessly eliminate all other errands that day is no longer viewed as a compromise.
It's not a failure to do more.
Exactly. It is recognized as a massive, legitimate victory of environmental design. You manipulated the variables, you expertly managed your cognitive load, and you achieved the objective without a catastrophic system crash.
That is true mastery.
That is mastery over your environment. It means giving yourself radical permission to lower your daily variable count without feeling that lingering toxic guilt that you should be doing more.
It takes all the power away from the external world, away from the judgments of the second meeting, and puts it entirely in your own hands. You control the variables, you protect the cup.
You protect the cup.
Wow. Let's recap the incredible journey of this source material. We started with a text that, on its surface, is about a person who was paralyzed by the thought of taking a bus.
It seems so small at first.
But it transformed into a profound masterclass on emotional processing and cognitive mechanics. We explored the reality of cognitive overload, realizing that a blank mind isn't a weak mind, it's a completely full mind running predictive simulations.
The RAM was just maxed out.
Right. We exposed the hidden evolutionary dangers of social masking and how the pressure to maintain a curated character in the second meeting is what truly drains our metabolic batteries.
The continuity trap.
We dissected the anatomy of jealousy, learning that affect labeling allows us to hold awe, admiration, and grief in the same hand without shame. And we confronted the heavy necessity of actually grieving lost time, demanding that we fully feel the pain of stagnation rather than burying it under toxic positivity in order to map our true baseline.
It is a remarkable testament to the resilience of the human mind and its ability to heal itself through radical observation and environmental adaptation.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a final lingering idea to mull over as you go about your day.
Oh, I like this.
The author of this text spent 9 agonizing years in deep isolation, but they emerged with a breathtaking, granular understanding of how their own mind works. Every trigger, every limit, every emotion meticulously decoded.
They really know themselves.
It makes you wonder, in our desperate, frantic rush to never miss out, to constantly keep up with the milestones of our peers, and to stay perpetually busy, are the highly functional, constantly moving people among us actually the ones who are profoundly disconnected from themselves?
Oh, wow.
Does true, deep self-knowledge require a pause that terrifies us?
That is the ultimate question. In a world obsessed with velocity, sometimes the bravest and most terrifying thing you can do is stop moving and see what is actually driving you.
So give yourself permission to lower the variables. Give yourself permission to measure your progress only against yourself, one small paved step at a time. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We will catch you next time.